just weird to me that we've gotten to a point where Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, and Garrett Nussmeier are considered the three best quarterbacks in college football. I look at Garrett Nussmeier. Some people say he could be the very best. Maybe he's the best in the SEC. But when I look at him, I'm reminded a little bit of Tyler Wilson from Arkansas, a guy that is a good quarterback, but for the most part, he just stands in the pocket. He's not really a dual threat guy. And then, two, he's blessed with great wide receivers like they always are at LSU. So I don't really buy him as a guy that can go to the NFL and just tear it up. Cade Klubnik has still been disappointing in some instances. I just think the ACC is so weak right now that I'm just not really buying it with him this year. And then Drew Aller, I think Nico could run that offense effectively that they've got up there at Penn State and would be better than Drew Aller just because you don't need a quarterback to do a ton of that system, and the receivers are getting worse this year for Penn State. So seeing them at 2, and they haven't beaten Ohio State in 9 years now, I think was the last time they did it in Happy Valley. And just ahead of some of these other teams like Georgia who have proven that they can win the big game in the past. Even Oregon and Alabama, I think. Well, I don't know about Oregon just because they got a new quarterback, but I look at Alabama like I trust them a little bit more historically than Penn State to win big games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of surprise. I mean, even Miami being in the top 10 after losing Cam Ward and their all-time leading receiver. And I think Tyler Barron's gone now too, right? Or is he still there?
Yeah, he's gone. He's on the Jets. We talked about him a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, Miami, I don't really get that at all. I guess Carson Beck. But then again, I mean, I felt like Carson Beck was a very hit or miss quarterback too. And his stats might not necessarily show that. But, I mean, I don't really have much stock in him either. And, I don't know. Clemson number 4, they barely, made it to where they ended last season. I mean, with a couple of different moves, they wouldn't even been in the playoffs at all. I don't know. It's quite confusing. I think Clemson's way too high on there. Miami's shocked to see them in the top 10. And then about 11 through 25, I feel like you can interchange most of those teams and just mix and match them wherever you wanted to. I don't really know what else to say. It's just a very confusing list, to be honest.
Yeah, ACC has just 3 teams in the poll, which is the fewest of any conference. And you're right about Clemson. I think they're good. I've seen way better Clemson teams ranked in similar spots than this one, though. I don't think this is Dabo Swinney's best bunch by any means. So it's surprising to see them that high. I'm trying to figure out who of the top 10 would bottom out because there's always that one team like Michigan and Florida State last year. Obviously, Michigan redeemed itself a little bit at the end of the season, but of course, Florida State had an unbelievably bad season. Looking up and down this list, I think the answers could be Oregon or Miami just because of the quarterback situations there. We don't know how Dante Moore is going to do at Oregon. Miami, Carson Beck was very underwhelming last season. Maybe he's underwhelming again this year. Time will tell. LSU, I don't think bottoms out, but I do think the road schedule dictates a lot of what they can do this season. And then Notre Dame is also unsettled on quarterbacks right now. And people usually complain about Notre Dame being ranked this high, but guess what? Marcus Freeman is 33-9 and just made it to a CFP title for the first time last season as a head coach out there. So I think this is pretty proper. So I don't think Notre Dame falls out just because they're not a quarterback-dependent football team. But those would be my guesses right now for teams to bottom out in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you for Miami. I think that's the most notable one in the top 10. I mean, the other teams are proven for the most part. I mean, there's question marks with LSU because, Brian Kelly never can seem to take it to the next step. Always has good recruiting classes, usually is good for 9 to 10 wins in a year, but just can't necessarily get over the hump. So LSU, I would definitely say that they have potential to fall out of the top 10. Oregon, like I know new quarterback and stuff. I'm a Dan Lanning believer. So I mean, I would think Oregon still makes it in the top 10, but who knows? I mean, I know Dylan Gabriel had a phenomenal season last year and they're losing him now. Notre Dame, like you said, I mean, Marcus Freeman's proven himself at this point. I think Notre Dame, especially considering they essentially get to create their own schedule every year and everything too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Notre Dame.
Hey, it's a fairly complicated schedule, though, just looking at it, because they're at Miami to start the season, so there's that. You get Texas A&M at home a little bit later. I know they're at Arkansas at one point. I got to remember who else was on there that was
They're
really
playing
good.
Clemson. I think they signed a contract thing with Clemson to play them for like the next 10 years or something like that.
I'm going to look this up because it's bothering me that I don't know it. Boise State could potentially be difficult. I know Genty's gone, but Boise State's always one of the better group of 5 programs. They're also at Pittsburgh, which is not the easiest game in the world. USC is still around. No Clemson anywhere, though. So
okay, maybe that's a future thing then.
Yeah, I think it actually may be a future thing, but I know what you're talking about. I did see that whenever they signed that deal. But overall, I think Notre Dame should be able to work things out and make a good season out of this year. But looking at some of the other teams ahead of Tennessee, I don't know if I buy some of these Big 12 teams being ahead of Tennessee. You've got a lot of experienced quarterbacks in the Big 12, and I think that plays a big factor in the rationale for putting these teams so high. But the Big 12 is also a very confusing conference now, because now that Oklahoma and Texas are both SEC teams, you don't really have an idea of who's going to win it every year. We thought Utah and Oklahoma State would be the 2 teams that could get it done last year. Guess what? They were near the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
Colorado, who everybody said, no, they're not going to be good this year. They're coming off a 4-8 season. They don't really show any signs of promise. Guess what? They made it to an Alabama Bowl last season. BYU, who also finished 5-7 the previous year, they were knocking on the door of the college football playoff. Arizona State, who was coming off, I think, a postseason ban, and they couldn't have won more than 3 games in 2023. They won the conference, went to the college football playoff. So you really never know with this conference, and it's going to be fun for that reason. You know, Arizona State, I get why they're ranked so high. I don't know if they'll have as magical of a season this year as they did last year. Looking at Kansas State as well, they're consistent. I don't know if I would pick them to win the conference and make the CFP. Who does that leave? Iowa State and Texas Tech. Look, Iowa State historically is one of the worst Power 4 programs in the country. And I think they're going to be good again this year because Rocco Becht is back there at quarterback. They'll be good. But I still don't believe they're in any kind of contention to win a championship. So that's just my 2 cents on them. And the Texas Tech, it just feels like every year since Mike Leach left, it's been somewhere between 5 to 8 wins every year and not much better than that.
Yeah, and with Texas Tech, isn't like most of their hype based off of like NIL and the money that they were able to fund? I mean, that's not enough, I would think, to put them in the top 25. I'm not sure.
They are throwing millions of dollars at softball players, Jordan.
Softball players?
Softball players. One left Tennessee because of that. I was talking about the angry parents of Tennessee athletes earlier. That was one of them. And then there was a pitcher that signed a pretty fat check down there as well. So, all kinds of money being thrown around out there. Obviously, they got plenty for football. It's that oil money. All the Texas schools have it. They'll use it to their advantage, as they should. But like most things in Texas, bigger does not always equal better, as is the case with Texas A&M. They have not been they have not been better for the most part. They've topped out at 8-5 most seasons since joining the SEC. So we'll see if the money actually works. But of course, that can be a point of conflict in locker rooms, as we have learned here recently.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their schedule from last season. Like they did better than I thought. I didn't really keep up with them much last year, but they went 8-5 and everything. So I mean, I guess they're justified in being the top 25. I just don't really see them being ahead of Tennessee, especially by 82 points, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the Big 12 teams go, I mean, I think Arizona State, I think there's still potential for them to be good this year with Levitt coming back and everything. Even with losing Scadaboo, I think Arizona State can still be pretty good. Um, I don't know, like these Big 12 teams. Honestly, it's still taking me time to adjust to seeing Texas and Oklahoma on here and not think of them as a Big 12 team. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. These Big 12 teams, I mean, who knows how they finish this year? Like you said, since Oklahoma and Texas has left, I mean, things are pretty much up in the air now. And like you got teams that weren't even in the Big 12 prior, like Arizona State coming in and then doing as well as they did. So I mean, yeah. I don't really know what to expect from a lot of these Big 12 teams. But I see on there too that BYU and Utah nearly missed it.
Yeah, Baylor was another one that just missed the cut, and some people are saying they could win the Big 12. I know Phil Steele is very high on them this year. BYU, I understand why they got left out. The quarterback situation in July of all times of year, that's not good for that to occur. And I'm just looking down at this list to see if I can find any others. Did you say Auburn was one?
Auburn's interesting. Yeah, they were receiving votes.
Yeah, they usually get some votes just because you never know what's going to happen down there on the plains for most seasons, but it does kind of feel like their ceiling is 7 wins this year.
And Florida State's on the list?
Yeah, that's a goofy one. That's a really goofy one.
That is shocking.
Yeah, well, they got more votes than Liberty of Louisiana Lafayette, and even TCU didn't have that many votes, and TCU won 8 or 9 games last season, so
but
that's
a 2-win team.
Yeah.
That is
maybe they just don't think they'll be down forever, I guess is the rationale there.
I guess, but yeah, if you're basing on last season, it makes no sense whatsoever for them to even be ranked in like the top 100.
All right, so looking at some of the other teams that are ahead of Tennessee here, do you really trust South Carolina at 13 with Shane Beamer? Like his career at South Carolina has been an absolute roller coaster.
I mean, I think they'll hit some highs like they typically do throughout the year, but like hovering, finishing the season around the 13 spot, probably not.
Yeah. And then looking at the Big Ten teams here, Illinois at 12 seems a little high. I can justify putting them somewhere between like 17 and 20, but Big Ten Burt has run his mouth just for having one good season up there. Can he actually sustain it, though, is the big question. I know he was solid at Wisconsin, but he had a horrible SEC record when he was at Arkansas. So I don't know if they'll be able to sustain that kind of football up there, especially at a program like Illinois that is not a traditionally great football program. So we'll see if they can do it. Indiana at 20, that's just goofy. You're just riding off that one season last year. I don't know. Maybe they come out and have a nice 9-win season, and they're justified for having that ranking, and you lock Kurt Signetti into a long-term deal because of it. But do you really expect Indiana to stay that good for 2 seasons in a row? It's just not who they are historically.
No, but I will say I haven't kept up with Illinois as much, but I have heard that there's a lot of hype with them coming into the season. I saw someone online somewhere say that they expect them to be in the Big Ten championship, which I would think is pretty surprising.
It's just your average Big Ten football team.
That's what it seems like.
Good defense and running the football, not much else involved.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a couple people in the comment section everywhere online. Maybe it's not like a widely accepted thing, but I have seen Illinois' name thrown around as like a team to keep an eye on. So I guess we'll see about that. Indiana, though, like you said, like I think a lot of it was based off last season for sure. I mean, because they exceeded everyone's expectation. I mean, first of all, what Indiana, like, you think about them basketball first and foremost. You don't associate them with football. So, I mean, it'd be hard to see them repeat the same success that they had last season. I think a lot of it was due to easier scheduling too. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure what their schedule looks like this year, but I
I'll
mean,
pull it up for you.
yeah, I highly doubt that they have the same success that they did the year before. Don't know as much about Kansas State and what they have to offer, to be honest. I know SMU, like I said earlier, I think just caught lightning in a bottle. Florida, like, I get it with all the hype that's surrounding their offense and everything, but I think Florida is a little bit unproven as well. And like I was hammering home earlier, it's just so shocking that Oklahoma is sitting there at 18, because that's just exclusively made on hype. And if the situation with Mateer, if that ends up being true,
I don't think it's true, but if it did, that would be a pretty serious nail in the coffin for Brent Venables, I feel like.
yeah, I mean, because surely, I mean, he'd be suspended for probably around the entire season. I don't even know what they would do about that, to be honest.
You look at South Carolina, Florida, and Oklahoma. I think all three of those teams, their success is going to be dictated by how they do on the road. Because I could very well see all of those teams finishing like 8-4, just because they all have very complicated road games. You look, Florida's got to play at Miami. They're at LSU later on in the season, at Ole Miss, who's 21 in this poll. There's another big one that I'm missing somewhere, slipping on me. Anyway, they play at Kentucky too. They're at Texas A&M. That's who I was missing. That's the number 19 team in this initial poll. And because you see the same problem with LSU too. You got Bama, Ole Miss, Clemson, and Oklahoma all on the road. Ooh. Oklahoma's got to go to Alabama, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So I think the big question is, can somebody emerge and win some big games in the road in the SEC and really solidify themselves as a college football playoff team? That's my big question this year, just with some of these teams in the poll. So I promised I'd give you Indiana's schedule, and I've got it right here in front of me. They have a cakewalk in non-conference play. They got Old Dominion, Jerry Mack's Kennesaw State Owls, Indiana State, the Sycamores come to town.
Larry Bird
on September 13th. Yeah. Open conference play with Illinois at home. That should be a pretty fun game.
Okay.
You've got two contrasting Big Ten teams there with Indiana trying to be a little bit more pass happy. And then, of course, you got Illinois just playing smash mouth football. You're at Iowa, which is never an easy place to play. Iowa is known for playing boring football. But I do think that's going to be a tough game for Indiana, just having to go out there. They're at Oregon, too. That's not easy.
Ooh.
That's not easy at all. Then get Michigan State and UCLA at home. Those are winnable games, I feel like. At Maryland, also pretty winnable. Then you're at Penn State, which I think is another one that could be complicated, especially if that happens to be a night game. Then you finish out the season with Wisconsin. You get a bye week, and then you're at Purdue. So I think maybe 20 is justifiable just because you could find a way to 9-3 there realistically. But I think it's probably closer to like 8-4.
Yeah, I mean, if they're even like as good as they were last season too, I mean, I could see them dropping more games than 4 too. I mean, it just depends on how it plays out. But yeah, they got some tough ones in there. Did you say LSU was one of their away games?
Who? Indiana? No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Okay, I was about to say then that's like a guaranteed loss right there. I mean, Penn State's going to be a difficult one for sure, as well. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Indiana, I guess around 20.
It's fair for now.
Yeah, it's fair for now.
But if they go out and win by like a touchdown against Kennesaw State, then they'll be in trouble. All right, so looking at some of, I guess, the last couple teams, but before we end out the show here that are ranked ahead of Tennessee that we hadn't mentioned, One of them's SMU. Jordan, you mentioned it earlier, very much a lightning in the bottle type season. And when you look at the ACC over the last 10 years or so, there's only one program that has really sustained their success, and that's Clemson. Florida State, post Jimbo Fisher, has been a hot mess. Miami is not the Miami it was 20 years ago. You're going to have some long-term stability from Mario Cristobal to convince me otherwise. And, I mean, you look everywhere else. Even Lamar Jackson was only so good at Louisville. You know, they fell off a little bit the next year. Even took a few uncharacteristic losses when he won the Heisman back in 2016. And then you look at everybody else, it's, you know, you're happy to have 8 wins a lot of seasons, it feels like. If you're talking about ACC programs, and SMU, this is only their second year in the conference. You know, you took the conference by storm last year. Can you do it again this year? Don't have the schedule in front of me. I don't know if I want to pull it up just because of how weak it is in all likelihood. But I could definitely see them falling below Tennessee just given how unpredictable that league is, aside from Clemson. And then the only other team I didn't mention that's ahead of Tennessee in the poll is Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss might be the sleeper team in the SEC this year because you look at their home schedule. First of all, they don't really have a difficult non-conference schedule. It's similar to what Tennessee's was in 2023, where you have like a weak Power 5 team at home, but the game that's actually difficult is against a good Group of 5 team in that way. And then it's not as if they don't play difficult games over the course of SEC play, but their difficult games, with the exception of Georgia and Oklahoma, are all home games. So they could easily stack some home wins, maybe finish the season with 9 or 10 wins and sneak into the college football playoff. And I know that sounds like it could be a bit of a stretch with Jackson Dart leaving, but believe me, they're very high on this Austin Simmons kid.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of hype about him in the offseason. I'm not really as familiar with him, so I'm about to look up his stats and see how he was.
He didn't do a ton last year, but he did stabilize their game against Georgia last season when Jackson Dart was hurt for a possession. He came in there, made some nice plays, and then ultimately helped bridge the gap there and of course, allowed Ole Miss to win that game last season. And other thing, too, this guy's already got his college degree at the age of 19, which is...
That's impressive.
Very impressive. Very, very impressive. So, not a ton of stats to go off of, which in a way I think does help Ole Miss because your opponents don't really have a feel for this guy just yet. So that should be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a good thing for sure. I think that's one thing that Tennessee's benefiting from this season. It's like these first couple of games when Tennessee's going to have to play. I mean, there's not going to be much known about their offense. I mean, you'd had just base it off the first couple of games of the year, like how Tennessee did against Syracuse. But of course, they're going to be learning during that time and still changing things up. So I think you can benefit from having an unfamiliar quarterback. And we mentioned before, like, how many times we've seen like NFL players just break out of nowhere because the starter got hurt and you prepping for Aaron Rodgers all week. And then now you got Matt Flynn as a starting quarterback and you know nothing about him except for his college career or whatever. And then he comes in and shreds it up. And, you know, that could be the case with Austin Simmons too. Maybe he doesn't live up to the hype. Maybe it was just the fact that the opposing teams weren't, or like Georgia wasn't, you know, just prepping for him to play, and then he ended up doing well. But Ole Miss being ranked ahead of Tennessee, I'm honestly not upset with that based on how they finished their season last year. I know Tennessee went to the playoffs and they didn't. I mean, I guess that's one knock you could have with the ranking, but I'm not too upset with Ole Miss being ahead of Tennessee.